Hello, this is Pastor Matthew Woods from Grace Lutheran Church in New Albany, Indiana, and this is the weekly devotion for September 11th, 2023. Today's title, Giving the Right Impression. Ever get the wrong impression about someone or something? I know I have. I know this may be a shock to some, but sometimes people get the wrong impression of us as well. So how do we overcome it? Well, that's the bit of a challenge, isn't it? But there is a way to make it possible to get the right impression, even after starting with the wrong one. So let's have some fun first, okay? I found some classified ads that used to be in newspapers that I want to share with you. It's on the internet. Let's take a look. The first one, wanted, man to take care of cow that does not smoke and drink. Oh, I didn't know cows smoked and drank. Try this one. Try us once, you'll never go anywhere again. Sounds kind of dangerous. Next one. Dog for sale, eats anything, and is fond of children. Not sure I want a dog that snacks on children. Next one. Illiterate, write today for free help. I'm not sure how to respond to that one either. Stock up and save, limit one. Sounds like a minimalist ad, doesn't it? Next one. Man wanted to work in dynamite factory, must be willing to travel. Sounds like a blast. Number 7. Semi-annual after Christmas sale. Doesn't Christmas come once a year? Next one. For sale, antique desk, suitable for a lady with thick legs and large drawers. I guess it's not sold until the fat lady sings. Number 9. We do not tear your clothing with machinery. We do it carefully by hand. Yeah, better to do it slow than in a rip-tear hurry. And finally, used cars. Why go elsewhere to be cheated? Come here first. Well, at least they're honest about cheating other people. Each of these ads more than likely left something out that could have been worded a little differently, communicated differently, but often that gave the unintended message and a wrong impression, perhaps. That's what's wrong. That's what wrong impressions do. The information is usually incomplete, or it's inaccurate, or it's exaggerated in some way, and inaccuracy gets stuck in people's minds. The wrong impression can come in a number of ways for a number of reasons, too many to go through today. The problem with starting with a wrong impression is that the message itself gets skewed, or the person doesn't get a fair chance. That's just the bottom line of it. Such is also the case with the Christian faith with many. Last week I attended the National Conference on Disaster Recovery for the LCMS. One of the presenters who worked on a flood area in Missouri mentioned that some of the flood victims thought that his LERT, that's Lutheran Early Response Team, group, they thought that they were scammers. And that's often what happens with these big disasters. People come in and rip people off. So when help was initially offered, many of the neighbors refused. Now, the LERT team started with 5 houses that belonged to fellow Lutherans. And little by little, others began to ask for help because they saw things happening. As the months went on and the work was getting done for free, news began to spread. As the neighbors witnessed the efforts of the volunteers, many of whom, by the way, came from out of state just to help, those neighbors changed their minds. Now, the HOA president was in the beginning very skeptical as well, and very protective, being in his position. He also heard the reports, though, of the work and saw the daily volunteers and investigated the work that was being done. And he had a change of heart. The HOA president eventually softened and talked with the coordinator, and in time they became friends. In fact, it was discovered that the HOA president was a former Lutheran who had wandered away from the church. So when Easter service came around that year, he decided that he was going to go to Easter service and sit in the pew next to the coordinator. What a great outcome. I would wish for that in every case. Now let's consider another example, one that may be more familiar to you. In Acts chapter 9, the Apostle Paul was met by Jesus on the road to Damascus, and eventually Paul came to faith in the Lord, and he began to preach boldly, we're told. Ananias, whom the Lord assigned as the first person to meet Paul, was a bit nervous because of the dangerous reputation Paul had earned for himself. In Acts 9:13 through 14, we're told, Lord, Ananias answered, I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with the authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name. But the Lord would go on to explain to Ananias that Paul was God's chosen instrument to proclaim his name to the Gentiles and to the people of Israel. Later in Damascus, by the way, Paul would preach a powerful message with courage and conviction. We are told in verse 21 that the people were astonished and asked, Isn't this the same man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on the name? And hasn't he come here to take prisoners for the chief priests? His reputation preceded Paul, but it began to change. After Damascus, Paul went to Jerusalem and preached there as well, and tried to meet with the disciples, who also heard of Paul's previous reputation, and they were afraid of Paul initially. But at this point, thankfully, Barnabas advocated for Paul, and they did eventually welcome Paul. And what's interesting is how the former allies of Paul eventually try to kill him. And once in Damascus and even Jerusalem, they try to kill Saul because of his faith in Jesus. That's amazing to me. But here's what's even more amazing. The very people who were once afraid of him, were running from him, were now working to save him and protect him from what was going on. So what a big turnaround that is when you think about it. The wrong impression of church and of Christians happens for many reasons. The alert volunteers who came only to provide free help to anyone who wanted it, at first they were believed to be scammers. But then they took no one's money, didn't ask for it. In fact, they paid for all the materials, volunteered all the time and labor, and stayed until the job was done 8 months later. They took Matthew 5:16 to heart, where Jesus says, Let your light so shine before men that they can see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Each day, they would get together and pray in the courtyard. Each day, their trucks full of material would come in. Each day, the volunteers would work with smiles and with gratitude for the opportunity to help. And each day, the neighbors were watching. And some would even come to glorify God. For Saul, his conversion shook Israel. Once the greatest champion of the high priest and the greatest enemy of the church, his reputation preceded him in Christian circles. After Saul's conversion, his reputation again preceded him, but in a very different way altogether. As an apostle for Christ, Saul no longer was ashamed to use his Greek name Paul either, wasn't ashamed of the cross or of Jesus, became a champion. And because of Paul, many became to believe in Jesus. A super powerful change. The bottom line is this. For us to give the right impression about our faith, it must be visible and it must be real. Minds and hearts have the best chance of getting the right impression of us as Christians by our examples, by our love for others. Of course, not everyone believed because of Paul's conversion, nor did everyone warm up to the efforts of the alert team. But neither group could deny that they saw it or that they heard it. Here's my point today. The hope is that by having the right impression of Christian people, as Christian people will get the right impression of Jesus and who he is. Being a witness is a high calling. On our mission trips to help others, I tell our groups that if we do it right, Jesus is the one they will give thanks for. The same is true of each of us every day. And so, may the Lord bless the impressions we make on others for the sake of Jesus. And in his name, amen. Well, once again, thank you for being with us today, and I appreciate you joining me in this devotion time. And I pray that your week would be a blessed one, and I look forward to seeing you again. Until next time, the Lord be with you. Bye-bye.